legend himself, Tripp Tracy, and I have something in common. Actually, no. I think the Tigers are not the 6 seed. I think they're the 5 seed. No, they are the 6 because the Astros were a division winner, and they didn't get the bye, so they are the 6 seed. The Tigers and the Mets are each the 3rd wild card team in their respective leagues. Tripp Tracy, Carolina Hurricanes color analyst, the legend himself, at Tripp Tracy on Twitter. Congratulations to the Tigers making the playoffs.
AG. Oh, big game in Houston coming up. And
yeah.
One of my favorite, two of my favorite childhood memories, going to Michigan football games with my dad, God rest his soul, and with my mom and dad at the clinching game of the '84 World Series.
Wow.
Yeah, when they beat the Padres, who I believe, no, your Mets are playing the Brewers. But, great memories. And, I'm sure you want to get into hockey, but I could tell you about a hilarious standoff years after that one of the members who hit a huge home run off of Goose Gossage, Kirk Gibson, and I had in northern Michigan.
You had a standoff with Kirk Gibson?
I did. I actually I was on a golf trip, so I probably had a few pops at the time. And he was with some mutual friends, and I said to him, I'm sure he had heard it a trillion times, but I said, when I met him, I said, Kirk, that home run you hit for the Dodgers was one of the greatest baseball moments I've ever seen, and he sort of blew it off. And so then I said to him, because the Red Wings had just won a Stanley Cup, and
right.
During one of the pre- or post-game shows, Gibson was out there on skates with tough guy Joe Kosher, and he could barely move. And, so once he blew off that home run comment, I said to him, Kirk, I got to tell you, I just saw you on skates during the Red Wings Cup run, and I'd stick to baseball. And now I've got his attention. And he's a big guy.
Yeah.
And he got right in my face, and he goes, well, what do you do? And I'm like, at the time, I said, well, I'm a professional hockey player. And he points down at me, and he goes, you got nothing on me. And so it was class. We ended up being friends, and he's very courageously, dug in and trudged forward with his Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And, but that was a classic moment with Kirk in northern Michigan.
Very nice, very nice. He had World Series champs with the Tigers in '84, Dodgers in '88. An absolute legend. All right, let's, as you are. I kind of teased into the conversation. With 3 preseason games in, Jackson Blake has played both of the road games, and he's been arguably one of the 2 or 3 best players, at least among the forward group, on the ice in both games that he's played. Now, I think you and I probably look at this roster and say, yeah, I'm pretty sure Rod's going to take the veteran players and leave the 3 prospects, whoever the best prospect is, leave them in the minor leagues to play a lot and play in the AHL and get seasoned, if you will. But is there do you see a scenario, barring injury, where Jackson Blake impresses enough where he can make the team?
I don't, barring injury, but I agree with you, and in particular in Florida Saturday, I thought he was the most offensively confident, dynamic player on the ice for either team. And that was tremendously encouraging. Now, he's a righty. I mean, he's wearing 53. Dinner was a lefty wearing 53. And, he reminded me, one's a righty, one's a lefty, I know, but some of the offensive, confident, skillful things that he did with the puck. I mean, he scored a beautiful goal. Mm-hmm. If you're Rod or Jeff Daniels running the forwards, like everybody in the lineup, you could point to a couple of puck management issues that he'll learn from and grow from. I think he's been excellent. He's definitely been the most noticeable of those 3A level prospects. With that being said, Unger Sorum, it's a commitment to a vision of a new position playing center. And, Nadeau hasn't, and it's not to panic about in any form or fashion, but he hasn't, been as noticeable as I've liked. But I just look at what the forward lineup, barring injury, is going to be, AG. And, on that fourth line, your wingers are 2 of 3 of the list of Jost, Robinson, and Brendan Lemieux.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that it's a great sign for the Hurricanes, what Blake has done. But when I look at, barring injury, what the opening night roster would be, I think it would take an injury, and you would want him playing in his first pro season an abundance of games in the American Hockey League. But that certainly doesn't run from, in any sense, the fact that he's played very well in both preseason games he's played.
Tripp Tracy is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show, and I agree. I think it is it's a long shot. I've termed it like there's 3 preseason games left, and my guess is he's probably going to play in 2 of them. One of the home games, and then my guess is we'll see, much like we have seen in the road games before, a skeleton crew of real NHL players. I shouldn't say real NHL players, but the Carolina's top NHL players on the road. But I do wonder if he impressed enough, and again, this is a long shot, could he play with Jack Drury and, let's just say, Tyson Jost or Eric Robinson on a fourth line? Since Rod's going to use the Staal, Martinook, William Carrier line as the checking line anyway, you could almost create more of a scoring element with Jackson Blake on that line.
My answer to your question is yes. I do think of the 3 players, that we spoke about before the first preseason game. There are these ultra exciting prospects and in Jackson and Unger Sorum and Bradley Nadeau. He, for me, is the one guy that, without inhibiting his development curve, that you could see him being a puzzle fitting in on a fourth line like that. I just think about this, AG. A couple of years ago, gosh, time flies, but when Jarvis came and, made the statement he did in the preseason, the one big difference, of course, being that you had to make a decision with Jarvis of either sending him back to junior for the entire year in the Western Hockey League. You didn't have the ability for Jackson Blake to go to the American Hockey League.
Right.
That's a big difference. But what ended up happening for Jarvis, which is all that he needed, an injury early in the season to Nino Niederreiter.
Mm-hmm.
That was his chance, and it was history after that. So, you're hoping that you're going to remain healthy, but, if there's an injury to any winger, if Jackson continues to play the type of hockey that he has and beckoning back, it really impressed me in real time that it seemed like Jarvis got better away from the puck and defensively and built trust very rapidly. If Blake can do that too with his offensively dynamic ability, who knows what can happen? But of course the big difference is, and I agree with everything you said, but as Jarvis, you wanted to keep him around for a little bit because if you didn't, he was going back to junior,
right, and
you were losing him for the year. Blake obviously can go to Chicago in the AHL.
Yeah, and the truth is, in terms of roster management, the Hurricanes are probably smarter not to risk some of the other guys to waivers, even though some might be risked to waivers anyway when you get to that point in the preseason, because you don't have to have waivers on Jackson Blake. You can just send him right to the American Hockey League. Tripp Tracy is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. The other thing I wanted to get your take on is that we saw a little bit of a shuffling in the training camp on the left wing of the top 2 lines. Aho and Jarvis going to be together. We started the preseason with Kokoniemi and Necas, and Svechnikov was up with Aho and Jarvis. Then Rod decided to move Andre with Kokoniemi and Necas. Then that line a couple of years ago started off the season. I mean, Svech and Necas were scoring like crazy. Kokoniemi wasn't scoring; he wasn't on the score sheet, but he was playing. He was playing all right, so that's fine. Jack Roslovic is the guy that has been playing with Aho, or practicing, played once with Aho and Jarvis. Do you see that as being the best fit? I know Roslovic played on a top line with the Rangers until they realized he wasn't producing, and so they shuffled the deck. They moved him well down the lineup. He's a great skater, and he's played with top players before. What are your thoughts on Carolina's top 6 forwards?
I would say my hope is, and it's such a small snippet size of one preseason home game, but my hope is that Roslovic continues to have the chemistry that he did with Aho in particular right from the opening shift. And then I also think about, too, right or wrong, my opinion is this. When you have 3 smaller guys, which you would have with that line if you were to start the season with Jack, Sebastian, and Seth together, you can get away with that in the first several months of the season. Before I think it ramps up, it gets heavier, and then, of course, it only gets heavier from that point forward.
Right.
So if they're going to play well, it would be, for me, in the first couple innings with baseball playoffs starting today of the season. I got intrigued. And, again, it's one small snippet size. But I loved Carrier, where Jesper Fast is, and I loved his bite among all the other things, and all the new guys immediately made an impact, which was great to see on Friday night. I loved the fact that Carrier in a preseason game, finished a check with purpose in his last shift of the game. So it really it provided some encouragement for me for that line. And then Svechnikov, I would assume it'll be with Kotkaniemi to start. Drury's had another good preseason.
Yes,
in
he
his
has.
2 road games. He's done everything that you would expect of Jack Drury. So that internal competition will certainly exist. But, if you can have Svechnikov doing the heavy lifting on one line, you've got Carrier complementing Jordan Staal and Jordan Martinook, and then that line that I think could especially potentially flourish in the first couple of months of the season. I don't mind the way that it looks. Then you figure out the 4th line. But again, this is one extremely small sample size of a preseason home game. But I did like Roslovic and Aho's chemistry right from their opening shift together.
And we're going to see them, I'm sure, when they spit out the rosters for tomorrow's game against Tampa and then Friday's game against Nashville. We are going to see, I'm guessing, a lot of the NHL lineup. Maybe tomorrow specifically, because the Hurricanes are donating all ticket proceeds all ticket revenue to the Hurricane Relief. Hurricane Helene Relief. I think it's going to be a full building tomorrow.
That's such a... Obviously, it's this is tragic to see what happened in the western portion of the state. And when we were flying down to Florida AG on Saturday, Brendan Lemieux was sitting right in front of me, and his dad, Claude, the longtime NHLer and multiple Stanley Cup champion that he was, has a house in the mountains in the western portion of our state. And Brendan was showing me some of the videos that Claude, his dad, had sent him, and it was just. It took your breath away.
Yeah.
And so for the Hurricanes to do this, it's wonderful. And I think about, we think about player movement in the off season, but I thought that hiring Doug Wharf, bringing him back to the organization as the president of the team, just the long admirer that I've always been of Doug, with how important the connection with the community, how important making a difference is to Doug Wharf, and now as the president of the team. You hate these circumstances, but I would have to think that Doug Wharf certainly had his hands all over, what should be hopefully a very helpful night for all those in our state with what they're facing tomorrow.
Yeah, with all respect to Billy Idol, Doug Wharf is a rock star, as you are, Tripp Tracy. People will get the commercial reference, I'm sure. Hurricanes color analyst. I will see you on the 5th floor for tomorrow evening's tilt against the Lightning, sir. Appreciate your time. Good luck to your Tigers.
Hopefully I'll be wearing a shirt tomorrow, unlike Billy Idol was when I saw him at the Hard Rock in Vegas.
We got stories everywhere. All right, Billy Idol story tomorrow. Thank you very much, Tripp.
CAG.
All right, man.
He's the best.
Yes.
I just want to hear him tell stories all day.
Undefeated.